Hello, and welcome to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here. Radio is such a great communication medium, and I'm here to help bring art into the conversation. On this radio show, we talk about art, artists, and the changing world of art in all its various forms. Whether you're an artist, an art lover, a collector, an art world professional, or in any way just love to be involved with art, we're glad you're here. The art world is an exciting place and is constantly changing. It's made up of a constantly evolving roster of new artists emerging onto the scene, and artists who have been on the scene for 40 or 50 years and more. Last year's arts world sensation was a 102-year-old woman named Carmen Herrera from New York, and she was heralded for having her first one-person show in a major gallery in New York City. You can get discovered at any time, right? Other artists are always making news. For example, Robert Rauschenberg, one of the most significant artists of the last 50 years, is being featured in a major retrospective now at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. It just opened and will be on exhibit through January, giving us a chance to see his work in an historical perspective. When you see the show, you'll notice how much his art and his way of seeing things has influenced what has gone on in the visual world. In the world of contemporary art, new artists like Carmen Herrera are receiving attention and notoriety all the time. That's what makes contemporary art so relevant and fun. Artists respond to the world around them, and they're interpreting it in unique and personal ways. Back in the 19th century, when the salons held power over social taste, there were stiff restrictions in terms of what was acceptable to make art about and what wasn't. I just caught a show at the Legion of Honor with a lot of Rodins in it, and I was reminded of how these restrictions held play over the way people could make art. Subjects had to be acceptable to the Academy, and they were limited to still life, to landscape, to historical events and mythology and religious stories. That's why when the Impressionist painters came along, they were so outrageous. They broke down those conventions and painted paintings of everyday life. It was shocking. Nowadays, pretty much everything goes. There's a lot that is shocking and a lot that isn't. You can determine what you like based on your own inclinations and your interests and what you like and what you respond to. Artists, too, are free to challenge and question any and all existing conventions. They're challenging customs with their images, with their subjects, and their materials. Materials have changed in the 21st century. They're constantly being reinvented. The same is true with collectors and buyers. Collectors can collect anything and everything. There's more openness in terms of what's acceptable than ever before. These attitudes make the art world more democratic, but it's also harder because there are so many options, and everyone's taste comes into play. The situation has become such that arts institutions, such as museums, define an aesthetic for themselves based on their own curatorial direction and the community that they serve. Each one is different. I took a trip across the country several years ago, visiting galleries and museums, and I was really impressed with how different each region was in terms of the visual aesthetic that they presented in their museums and their art centers and in their galleries. When it comes to art galleries, galleries also tend to define their aesthetic based on what appeals to the gallery owners. Gallery owners are really unique and individual. Their galleries are a result of a very personal and often controversial or groundbreaking aesthetic that they want to present, or it can be more traditional. And it's always shaped by their location, depending on what the clients respond to. Galleries have been known to band together in districts And that allows more people to come to visit a number of galleries at once and choose the ones that they like. Rather than having the kind of art that they choose to show or how to find the right artists, the biggest challenge for galleries these days has to do with location. Location causes a significant challenge and sometimes a problem because there isn't a lot of available space that is also affordable. Today, as my guests, I have with us two gallery owners on the show who are going to tell us about how they are handling this changing problem. Rents have been rising all over the country, and in every community, the rents have been moving galleries and artists out of their comfortable spaces. Artists have had to find new spaces for their studios, and as a result, they've had to move out of the city. This has happened in San Francisco, which has grown as a tech center. Buildings that housed artists and galleries have been pushed out and forcing a real problem for the galleries and artists that want to continue in business. This tenuous situation was met by a very creative solution by two San Franciscans, Deborah and Andy Rappaport. They have a great story, and it's really exciting to tell what they did. The Rappaports are entrepreneurs and longtime art collectors, mostly collecting art that brings social awareness and crosses many media. They've enjoyed a long cultural exchange and engaged with the art that has brought them into the current situation, and they wanted to do something to meet the challenging situation head on. So what they did is they envisioned and created an entirely new facility that offers affordable and economically sustainable spaces for galleries, artists, and related nonprofits. They founded three warehouse buildings in the Dogpatch area, which is an industrial part of the south side of San Francisco, and they began a large-scale renovation to house their vision of a new kind of arts community. The complex is called the Minnesota Street Project, and it retains and strengthens San Francisco's contemporary art community by providing public art exhibition spaces. In doing this, they have created a main building that has 11 permanent and independent gallery spaces and one temporary space available for rent on a short-term revolving basis. These spaces are open to the public. One of the gallery spaces houses a nonprofit educational organization that supports arts in San Francisco schools. The galleries are on 2 floors surrounding a big open atrium that is a shared space for openings and special events. The building has a special program manager to coordinate for activities, and they also have some public bleacher seating for people who want to just hang out and linger there. They're making free Wi-Fi available, and they're really making it a people-friendly place. Galleries can share resources such as security, an online presence, and other forms of doing PR. And the whole thing has fostered a really nice sense of community. In Building 2, there is a separate building that's not open to the public, and that's housing an artist studio program for 35 independent artists. The third building houses a climate-controlled art storage space. So the Minnesota Street Project was completed and opened last year, and it's become a phenomenon. And I'm really pleased to have 2 of those gallery owners here on our show today, Nancy Toomey and Monique Deschaines. When we come back, I'm going to have you find out their story with a face-to-face conversation. We're coming to you live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. Stay with us and find more about this exciting change in San Francisco's arts community. Hello, and welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show, coming to you live from BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, And today we're talking about the fantastic Minnesota Street Project that was established in San Francisco and opened just under a year and a half ago. When the project opened, there were lines around the block, and people had to wait to get in due to the limitations of fire codes. I think since that wonderful opening night, it hasn't slowed down much at all. I'm pleased to have two of the gallery owners who have galleries in the Minnesota Street Project facility here with us today. And I'd first like to introduce Nancy Toomey of Nancy Toomey Fine Art. Nancy has opened her gallery at the Minnesota Street Project following an 18-year stint with a former gallery, the Toomey Terrell Gallery in downtown San Francisco at another popular gallery building called 49 Geary. But it's the changes that have occurred since her move that I wanted to focus on today. And so, Nancy, thank you for being here and welcome to the program. It's good to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'd love to get started by having you tell us a little bit about the differences between your former location and the one that you're in now at the Minnesota Street Project. What is specifically maybe most dramatically different for you in this new location?
I would have to say off the top of my head, I mean, I was downtown at a time when it was a very sort of thriving art center, and due to rising rents and everything that has been very well documented in San Francisco for the last 10 years or so, I noticed that, it became more and more of a struggle. And I think that a lot of us in the visual arts felt that we had been sort of marginalized, and the landlords and everybody else were more interested in having tech firms and such take over their spaces. So what I noticed, the most exciting thing for me was, rather than having a landlord like Cushman Wakefield dictate what was going on in the building, it's a true arts community here. Andy and Deborah have provided a really just a beautifully orchestrated, well thought out space, and just a space for all of us to thrive, and we work together. That's the main thing that I really feel. I feel like the other gallerists that are here with me, we're all in it together. We all have each other's best interests at heart, as opposed to any kind of threats. People get, threatened or overly ambitious, or there's none of that here. It just has a beautiful vibe, if I may use the word, that, it's very conducive to artistic endeavor.
That's so nice to hear, because you are actually all galleries, and in a sense you could be competitors, and yet you're obviously feeling the confidence and the trust enough to work together for the greater good. And the greater good is to bring...
It's a lovely change.
Yeah, I bet. And I think it's just a great model for the way that we can live in this world. We have those choices. So Nancy, tell me what kinds of clients have been attracted to come to this kind of building. It's more of a destination because it's not in the downtown area. But what kinds of clients are you finding end up there to look at art and enjoy all the various art offerings that are there?
Well, I think there are always the usual suspects, the people that have always been engaged with the arts in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they certainly come around and, usually every month to see what everybody's up to. I feel like it's a less intimidating building than, say, walking into 49 Geary, where it used to be. So there is a younger contingent. I mean, obviously, one of the things that the art world in San Francisco has always been concerned with in later years is harnessing the tech money that has change the fabric of the city and get these younger people interested in collecting art. So that's still an ongoing process, but you do really see a lot of younger people come through, whether they're here for an event and they wander around and then they become engaged. So that is quite heartening. There's also out-of-town people who come because this is now a destination on the art radar of the San Francisco community. And I've also noticed a lot of people from like the peninsula who maybe would not have come to the 49 Geary building are very excited about these spaces and are coming by.
That's great. I think in terms of location, it's probably a very good proximity to the peninsula and Silicon Valley. Nancy, I'm curious to know that how your gallery has changed a little bit. It seems that you have moved more into a slightly different aesthetic by showing more of the School of Light and Space Art. Would you say that your gallery is shifting a bit and it's what it shows?
I've always been interested in that sort of period in Los Angeles that gave birth to the light and space movement, and I think that there are a lot of even newer, younger artists who are still working within that aesthetic. I find it to be more and more compelling. Maybe it's because as the world gets more and more complicated and a little crazy, there's something to be said about taking the time to sort of take a deep Zen breath and experience, to stand in front of a painting and experience light and our perceptions of light, and just really to take a moment and of reflection, if you will. And so I find that kind of work
really
has become more and more compelling.
It is definitely a very compelling aesthetic, and I want to hear more about it. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after a break, because we're hearing from Nancy Toomey of Nancy Toomey Fine Art, and she's got a great story to tell. So stay with us. This is the Art Ambassador radio program. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show, coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're here today with Nancy Toomey of Nancy Toomey Fine Art, located in the brand new Minnesota Street project in San Francisco. And Nancy was telling us about her gallery. One of the aesthetic focuses she has is showing art and primarily paintings from what's called the Light and Space School or movement. And Nancy, tell us about what it's like for people to experience some of these paintings in person.
Well, I mean, it's exciting, and I think that Minnesota Street provides enough of a pleasant and welcoming environment, and that's why it's such a pleasure to be here, because the kind of work that we're talking about is very, very process-driven and involves manipulation of material to create the experience of really contained light is what it is, and it can't be experienced on a computer. It can't be experienced through a picture of the work, and I think that. I think it's a very revelatory experience for especially young collectors to come in and see this kind of work and realize that it's what they bring to the table. It's them standing in front of this piece and experiencing it firsthand. And it's a very exciting thing to do. And that's why we welcome people to come and actually experience the art firsthand. It's really crucial.
Yes, it's really true that there's nothing like being in the presence of fine art. And I think a lot of people who haven't been exposed to it, perhaps when they were growing up, and maybe the only exposure they've had is to see art reproduced in a book or on a screen, don't really recognize the power and the value of being face to face with a work of art and allowing that one-on-one contact to seep into you, allowing yourself to develop a relationship with the artwork. And you really offer that in your gallery, that opportunity for people, free of charge, obviously, to come in and develop that relationship with a work of art and learn about that. Do you find that you're, as a gallery owner, often educating people about the pleasures and the joys of working and living with art?
Oh, sure. I mean, I've had some really very, very interesting clients that I've met just this year, and these are people who are very advanced in terms of their place in the world, owning these fabulous houses and all that, but really feel unsure of themselves when it comes to placing artwork. And it's a very, it is a daunting world, and it's frightening to a lot of people. So it's been really fun for me to have but maybe a young couple come in and they invite me to their house, and I look around and I get a sense of who do I think these people are, what kind of art do I think that they really want to live with. And then, I make proposals, and I bring things to their house, and we talk about them, and they get to experience them firsthand, and they find themselves spending, first of all, more money on art than they thought that they would, because I think they are starting to understand the intrinsic value of how it so enhances one's life to be surrounded by art. I mean, once you start, you can't stop.
It's true. Once you start understanding and developing that relationship with fine art, you want to have more and more of it, and the more cursory experiences just don't give you the same meat and richness and value. You and I probably are both examples of how that passion can lead us to a life where we just want to be around art and share the wonders and beauty and experience of it. I know one of your interests, Nancy, is to, yeah. I know that one of your interests is also to exhibit art that maybe has a more socially engaging message. Can you tell us about some of the artists that you work with, or that aspect of what you bring to your gallery?
There's one artist that comes to mind in particular that I carry. I mean, a lot of what I do is abstract, but there's one artist named Monica Lundy that I've been working with, and I literally started working with her not because she particularly fit into my program, but because, she is such an incredible artist. And my first show that I did with her was she had gone and researched people who had been arrested for prostitution in San Francisco in the 30s and 40s. And really, they were literally from the mug shots that she discovered in these through these archival books. And it was mesmerizing to see, because it was a chronicle and a document of the dispossessed, the lost, the souls, the sad souls that slip through life. And she brought them to life on the gallery wall. And it was a sellout show. I mean, it was the most incredible show, and her career has gone on to new heights. But it was thrilling. It was absolutely thrilling. So that was just one aspect of, looking at, this criminal underclass in a completely new way through these absolutely stunning portraits.
Well, I remember walking into the show of Monica Lundy's work and being mesmerized by it. And I'm so glad that it got that kind of sellout response. That you all, that's great. Well, Nancy, it's really been great to have you on the show today and tell us about your experience. I want to invite you all who are listening to visit Nancy Toomey Fine Art and see her ongoing exhibitions. They change approximately monthly. Her gallery is in the wonderful new Minnesota Street project in the Dogpatch area of San Francisco. Thanks again for joining us today, Nancy. And
Thank
we're
you.
going to take a short break.
Gwenda, it was a pleasure to speak with you. Cheers.
Fantastic. Great to have you here. We're going to take a short break. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay tuned. We have more interviews and more art. Hello, and welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, coming to you live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Today, we've been talking about the changing art scene in San Francisco and the impact of a wonderful new gallery-oriented and art-oriented facility in San Francisco called the Minnesota Street Project. We've been speaking with one of the owners of a gallery that's located at that space, Nancy Toomey, and now I'd like to introduce a second gallery owner, Monique Deschaines. Monique is a gallery owner with a unique vision that combines both photography and painting. It's an unusual combination for a gallery. For 8 years, Monique worked as the director of the Haynes Gallery, a prominent San Francisco gallery that shows a range of contemporary artists, both emerging and established. And many of those artists are of Asian heritage, such as artist Ai Weiwei. Monique left that gallery in 2015 with her love of art intact, but her plans for the future were up in the air. During the interim, she did a little curating, a little teaching, and worked on various projects. She was also invited to be on the board of the San Francisco Camera Works, a photography art center and museum, which gave her an opportunity to be involved with her ongoing love of photography. It was the artist that she knew who encouraged her to start her own gallery. And in 2016, she started Equinom. It took me a while, Monique, to figure out what Equinom is, and I actually figured it out. It's your name, Monique.
Yes, it is. It's my name backwards. Yes. Yeah, it was a college nickname that I had.
Well, it's serving you well as a gallery, and welcome to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about your gallery and the stable of photographers and painters that you are showing there.
Yes, I'm actually really interested in photography and photographers that are sort of pushing the medium into, I think, a new type of medium, meaning they're taking the historical aspects of photography and they're using those same type of chemical processes and shifting them and making these really amazing artworks and seeing where they can go with them. And it's been really, really great. And I'm also interested in very, in a way, straight photography. But, it's really in my heart, it's the use of like cyanotypes, photograms, palladium prints and, things like that. And, I still believe in, shooting with a film camera. And I think that it's a really, it's a beautiful, beautiful medium.
It is a fantastic medium.
Yeah.
Photography is definitely a medium that has really... Monique, it's so good to hear you talk about the artists in your gallery who are pushing different strains of photography and being experimental with their technique. You are currently in the process of installing a wonderful new photography exhibit of an artist, Clea McKenna, in your space at the Minnesota Street. So tell us about that show. It sounds really exciting.
It is. It's Clea McKenna is... we are installing, actually, we're finishing up installing today. She has been working on a series of photograms that are photographic rubbings and photo etchings, as well as photograms. And they have this beauty to them. She has been doing cuts of wood and with the grain of the wood. She's also been taking fabrics and doing etchings from the fabrics. And it's this really unique process with, I should say, black and white, photographic paper. And it's really, really stunning.
Now, I know there's also an installation that she's creating, which it sounds like it's going to be very entertaining, maybe even interactive for someone who comes into the gallery. And that's quite different. What's that going to be like?
Yeah, that is 50 photographs that are roughly, each photograph is about 20 by 24. And it's an installation of two different continuous lines, and the lines have been created from rubbings that Clea has done from bunkers out in the headlands. So from like a crack on the floor to a crack on the wall. And it's really, then what Clea does is that she takes these rubbings, and after going into the darkroom and printing them, or processing them, I should say, she goes back into her studio and she creates these different lines. And it's quite exquisite. And along with that, Clea stepped into the film world, and we are going to be showing for the first time her first film in the media room at the Minnesota Street Project. And so that's actually quite exciting as well.
What a nice and diverse exhibition that will be. And speaking of diversity, Monique, last month when I was in your gallery, I saw an exhibition of painters, of artists who work in the painting medium. And that was quite exciting to see and different for you. So how do you end up working with these painters, and how do you select your artists?
From actually many different ways. The last show, there was a painter in it, a sculptor, and a photographer. There's 3 artists in it, and each one used the photo medium in a different way. And even one of them I had been talking with, and who was a friend of mine for several years. One of the artists and sculptors, she actually was introduced to me from another curator. And Dana Harrell, who's a painter, my associate knew her work, and so we started talking to her that way. But my rest of my artists, some of them I have had long relationships with, in terms of like being friends with them or knowing their work and seeing them. I do believe that, every, artist, even if I fall in love with their work, it's a long conversation in terms of like, do I want to show them or, work with them? And it's a long conversation that we have as, art galleries, because there's a lot involved with showcasing artists.
Yes, and it sounds like it's a very personal relationship for you, which makes sense to me. And you also have an unusual gallery in that you don't actually have a permanent space, and you've had to use a couple of different spaces or find spaces that are available and have pop-up shows, which must really be challenging for you to connect the space and the artists and to get your audience together. But you're doing really well. So, I'm pleased to hear it. But maybe you can talk a little bit about those challenges.
Yeah, it has been challenging. I've basically been moving the gallery space around and using the term pop-up probably every month to every 2 months. And I've been doing this since April. It has to do with, the space that I had for a year was changing, and, the rent was also going up. And so I needed to sort of, figure out where my next, step was going to be. And my main concern was to keep the exhibition schedule going. And Minnesota Street Project has allowed me to do that. I mean, what Andy and Deborah have set up with this, program, being at the galleries, the artist studios, the offices, the art program, it's really quite amazing, and has allowed me to still be successful. I have my office in, their, short-term office areas. They also provide viewing rooms so that I can still see clients when I don't have gallery shows. And that's actually been really, really amazing. The hard, aspects of it is that I'm moving every couple of months or every month. And that can be really exhausting and a lot of work. But
yes, I'm sure.
I'm
sure it is.
Yeah.
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 One of the things well, that's good. That's good. And I hope that you have clients or potential clients who are following you as well and able to find you. I'm sure it's a challenge for your outreach, and maybe you have to be more present on Facebook and Instagram and
yes.
getting the word out. Yeah. One of the things I loved also when I was in your gallery was seeing a video. And you said that the Minnesota Street Project has a special video room. And I hadn't really thought that in terms of accommodating that medium, you do need a different kind of hookup or facility. So how has that worked out?
It's worked out beautifully. I think that for me, seeing video as an art form, it needs to be felt and seen. It needs to be a physical, experience, meaning you need to be surrounded by sound. You need to have your visual overcome like you are in a movie theater, but in a slightly different way. And the media room that the Rappaports built in the Minnesota Street Project is really, it's exquisite, and the sound is just so pure, and you can hear things in different areas and of the room, and it's allowed my artists to really show these, pieces from Christina Seeley, who showed a 2-channel piece that, one side was, this video from Greenland and the other side from Panama. But if you were in different, sections of the room, you would hear different things from a, rushing of glacier melt to, sort of birds or trees rustling. And, there's something really, it was just sort of amazing. And it's sort of the way that I feel that, if you're doing video art, that you should show it. I know the Catherine Clark Gallery, they built in their gallery space a media room because she has so many artists who have been showing video art. And they designated that area because you do need to have that specific sound quality. And there's no way that you can show it.
It really is an immersive experience, and it's different from looking at a screen. But when you are allowed to be in a space with total sound moving around and 2 different images that are really opposite, that you have to physically turn around to see the other image. It's very powerful. If I could summarize, Monique, I think that the art powerful is a good word for you. I felt that and each of the artists whose work I've seen has kind of an inherent projection of a certain powerful presence. Really wonderful. I'm so glad that you've been able to pull this gallery together, and I know you're going to have some exciting things for us in the future, even with the fact that you don't have a permanent space. Do you have some ideas about where it's going to take you and how you can take the next steps forward so we can stay on path with you?
Yeah, I will be my next show. So CLIA's through the end of the year and opens this Saturday. And I hope people come out. And also, I should mention that the first Saturday of every month in the Dog Patch is First Saturday, and all of the galleries are open late till about 8 p.m. or a little bit later. So it's a wonderful time to come, and there's always a great community that comes forward. But for my gallery personally, I will be showing Megan Rippenhoff in February and March. And I will also be doing the Photo Fair San Francisco, which is in February 22nd to the 25th, and that's over at Fort Mason. And that will be all galleries from, local to national to international, and it's really, really exciting. So.
Well, the photo fairs have been a good way for you to expand your reach, even without having a permanent space. So you've been to the Photo London, which gave you an international presence. Yes.
Yes. So, yes, it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, it is truly an international world. And Monique, I think you're making a specifically unique contribution by having a gallery that shows specifically photography and also includes painters whose works that you love. We look forward to continuing to see your gallery shows and having an opportunity to visit Minnesota Street Project. It's certainly a unique place. So thanks for joining us today. We're going to take a short break.
Thank you.
This is Gwenda Joyce. I am your host of the Art Ambassador Radio Show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We've been talking with two gallery owners today from San Francisco. Galleries are intended to be welcoming and friendly places to introduce people to art and inspire interest. There's no need to be intimidated, as you can see by our conversations today with the gallery owners, and built into the looking at art and making it accessible to the general public. Looking at art galleries is free. It's one of the most entertaining cultural activities that people can do free of charge. Never been to a gallery? Don't know what to do? Well, all you have to do is walk in and look around. Engage with the art, look at it up close, and look at it at a distance. See if you can figure out what the artist is thinking as he or she is making the art. Art is both a form of expression and a communication. If it confuses you, don't be afraid to ask questions. People in the gallery are trained staff, and they're there to inform you about the art and the artist. They're not going to expect that you have all the answers. Feeling pressured to buy? Also, no need to. Sure, it's great if you want to buy art, but most gallery staff realizes that it's rare for someone to just walk in and buy something off the wall. Usually you want to develop a relationship or have an experience, and it takes time to develop that. You might want to learn more about the artist. You might want to know what the materials are. And you also want to fall in love with it. You don't want to buy something that someone else tells you to buy just for the sake of their taste. It's a very personal thing, probably the most personal thing that there is. Prices are often not made public, and this is intentional. People are often asking, why aren't there prices on the wall? And the reason that's done is so that the artwork is considered first and foremost, separate from how much it costs. Artwork has intrinsic value, and if you can get that and see that and relate to that, then that's what's really most important. The pricing is secondary. Galleries don't want to come across as having a price tag be more important than the art, so they don't necessarily push it forward. But if you are interested in purchasing or even curious about the price of the art, it's fine to ask. That's totally valid. Asking doesn't mean you're obligated to buy as well. The same goes with asking for more information about the art and the artist. Feel free to do so. I think you can tell from our gallery owners who were on the show today that They want to answer your questions. They want to help you with their guidance. Next week is Art Fair Week in Miami. All of us art lovers, including myself, will be heading there to see the most diverse presentation of thousands of artists and hundreds of galleries and more than 15 art fairs. It's a busy time and very excited. I hope you'll join me when I come back, and I'll bring a full report back to you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at gwenda@artambassador.net. I'll answer them on our next program. This is Gwenda Joyce, the Art Ambassador, your host of the Art Ambassador radio program. Thanks for joining us today on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. See you next time.